On the morning of February 20th, 1881, a police officer led a search party through the woods in Hill County, Texas. The officer and the search party were looking for a father of 7 named George Arnold, who had vanished from his home 2 days earlier. The only clue as to where George may have gone was a letter he left behind for his wife. And in this letter, he said he had gone off into the woods and that she should not follow him. The lead officer is trudging through the woods. They're way off the beaten path at this point. They eventually came to this pretty decent sized clearing. And in the middle of the clearing is this one huge tree. And at the base of the tree was George. So at this point, you need to understand that there was some nuance to the letter that George left behind for his wife. He didn't just say, "I'm going into the woods, don't follow me." He said, "I have to go into the woods." And the way the letter ended was George saying how much he loved his family and wished he didn't have to do this. The Maine police officer and the search party, they see George at the base of this tree and they hustle over to him. It was obvious he was dead. However, that wasn't the main sentiment as they're walking over. George was chained by his ankle to the tree he was sitting next to. There was a padlock on the chain. There was no way to get it off. George was also completely naked, but his clothes were sort of tattered up and sitting in a pile right next to him. And George was covered in all these scrapes and cuts, and they looked like teeth marks from a human's mouth. And then next to him on the ground, along with his clothes, were all these little like white stones. They realized the white stones were actually teeth, George's teeth. And the tree that he was lying up against had all these deep gouges in it that sort of looked like if you took your own teeth and began biting into the wood, and then also scattered amongst his teeth were many of George's fingernails, because apparently George had also been raking his fingernails against this tree. Well, it would turn out, quite recently, something very bad happened to George. He was bit by a dog who was carrying rabies. Today, if you're bit by an animal that has rabies, you just get a rabies shot. But in 1881, the cure didn't exist, and he didn't want to put his family in harm's way. Now, George was a very religious guy, so he didn't believe in the idea of taking your own life. And so instead, what he did is he wrote this letter to his wife, and then he went into the woods, chained himself there, and basically allowed himself to die this horrible death, where he must have been in so much agony and pain that he's doing things like biting the tree until his teeth broke off and his nails fell off. His death must have been absolutely wretched and painful, but he did it to protect his family.